Now we're going to go into question and answer panels, which I'm handing over the reins to Julian.
Thank you very much, Alice, and thank you to all of our speakers as well. What a really interesting evening we've had so far. We do have a handful of questions, so perhaps let me start with this one from Alison Foster. She says, I've had discussions where the history of the term ethnic can be perceived as negative, especially if it's linked to being non-anything. There are specific issues which relate to race that are different to ethnicity. So what issues have people encountered in the use of language? Now, she hasn't addressed that to anyone in particular, but perhaps I could start by asking Deepak if you'd like to comment on that.
Yeah. I saw that point there, and I think it's going to be difficult I will comment on it from a very slightly more medical perspective, and then probably reach out to the community on that front. I think the main, what Angela asked there is, hey, where does that point go? Just remind me, how best to do this in the campaign? God, I've lost that point there. Well, I'd highlighted it for me there. Good God, I've lost it. Can you just repeat that last part?
Yeah, sorry. The point was around the history of the term ethnic being perceived negative. Now, what issues have you encountered in the use of language?
My biggest bugbear with a lot of communication around there, and I completely agree with the point, ethnic somehow derails the conversation into a different way there. We do need to move away in some way from the BAMER or these kind of common terms we use to identify something. So I completely agree with the spirit of it. What we struggle with is that somehow the importance of what this COVID meant to a certain community of people who were being affected had to come across. And I think the common media picks up on something that's catchy, that's quick, that's sayable, that kind of conveys everything in one niche term. So ethnic and BAMER starts to become more popularly used. From a scientific or a medical perspective, we are moving away. Communication is now being looked at more carefully, especially in healthcare, how we communicate certain things, how we send across certain messages, avoid certain stigmatizing terms. And I think ethnic is always a term which I've been careful to avoid using or restrict it as much as possible. What would be a suitable alternative? I think the floor is open to the community. What would we go for to convey certain differences that are there between the diversity that's there, but how do we bring inclusivity still? I don't have a good enough answer for that as well.
Well, there's some suggestions coming up that perhaps diverse communities or marginalized communities might be alternative expressions. I don't know if that would work. Do you think either of those or something different?
No, it's a good start, I think, Julian, to at least address the diversity. I think diversity and inclusivity seems to be safe terms to go for right now. It's PC enough without getting ourselves in the crosshairs of some media organization.
Okay. I wonder if I could put the same question to you then, Gulfraz. Have you experienced any issues with language, particularly around the term ethnic?
Yeah, it pops up quite often actually, and I think one of my last meetings was up with the Leicestershire County Cricket Club, and it did come up there actually because again with Black Lives Matters is a very important movement at the moment, and the South Asian Action Plan was specifically geared for the South Asian cricketing community. With respect, the Caribbean cricketing community maybe make up 1 or 2% at the moment. So there was a sole focus and drive by the ECB, and that was funded and working with the community that, as I said, makes up 35% plus. So that question did come up, and I think in time it's an honest question, is an honest reflection that we probably have to change it a little bit. We always have been very inclusive, but we're very conscious that obviously the Caribbean cricketing community do not have the same representation as probably they feel that they should have in cricket. So there's a lot of work to be done there, but I'm absolutely convinced that the cricketing authorities, the ECB, are absolutely on the right path. And if we need to word it in a different way that makes people more inclusive, then absolutely, I'm confident the governing body will address that accordingly.
Okay, thank you for that. Mark, do you have any thoughts on that question of what issues you've encountered in the use of language, particularly around the term ethnic?
Like most terms, ethnic can be both positive and negative, can't it? And I think everybody in this kind of call will feel the same. Sometimes it helps in terms of identifying different people groups to use the phrase ethnic groups, and other times it can seem inadvertently to be a marginalizing term. And so I think that's what all of us want to try and avoid. And I'm a little bit like what's already been said earlier. I don't like pigeonholing people too much. What does ethnic mean? Because actually most of us, if we trace our history, our DNA, will realize that we are such a wonderful mix of ethnicities, aren't we? I mean, my DNA test came back recently and I discovered, to my delight, that I'm 16% from the slave coast of West Africa, which was a complete surprise to me. But I thought, what a delight to have some African in me as well. I knew I'd have some West Indian. I didn't know I'd have some African as well.
Wow, that must have been a surprise. Margot, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's like I said, the perception of the word ethnic is really narrow. And I think it's really important that we look for different wordings and different ways. And I did like the diversity idea. I think if we can start looking at diverse communities. And Mark, I'm waiting for my ancestry DNA to come back. So I shall let you know what percentage I am of everything. But yeah, I mean, we all have different roots, don't we? And yeah, I'm keen to get rid of the word ethnic. I like the idea of diverse communities.
Thank you. That's definitely a positive alternative, and I do apologise for the audio interruption. Hold on. Sorry about that. Interestingly, the other key question that's come up tonight is around the term BAME or BAME, which is obviously related to what we've just been discussing. Nindulai said, I can't relate to being called BAME, and Catherine McCant suggests, is there an alternative to BAME that is acceptable? So again, perhaps we could go around the speakers again. Deepak, starting with you, is there an alternative to BAME that is acceptable?
I've racked my head, Julian. I would leave it to the community to come there. I didn't like it the first thing. Last thing, you know, in medical term, we have something called as a GOMA, which we learned in medical school as someone where we don't know what to do with that person, somebody who's elderly, and it was a very poor, disparaging term, and I didn't like using that. I think to me, BAME falls.
No, we've lost you.
Oh, no.
Deepak, I'm sorry, I don't know if you can still hear us, but unfortunately we've lost you. We'll come back to you in a moment. Gulfraz, do you have any suggestions to an alternative?
Not so much a direct name, Julian, but what I would say is that the word British needs to be on there, because many of us are fourth generation British, and we're very proud to be British. And you know, we've got a practicing Muslim playing for England at the moment with the beard, and that was a huge shift for a game like cricket. And we've had Monty Panesar prior to that wearing a turban. So from a cricketing family, I think we're absolutely on the right track and ahead of many other sports. But I'm just thinking out loud, actually, from my perspective, my father came here with two trousers and a shirt. with nothing. I'm third generation, and very, very proud to be British. So I'd like to see the word British in there somewhere, but I appreciate that. I think, Julian, we're never going to please everybody, are we? I mean, there's so many rainbows of diversity and so many rainbows of nationalities from around the world. But for me, the one word that comes is British, and we're proud to be British, and we're proud to be contributing to Britain.
Yes, thank you. I think you make a good point there that pleasing everybody is going to be very difficult indeed. But obviously, we've got to try to find the best way forward with this. Mark, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that. Do you have any ideas as to an alternative to BEMA that might be acceptable?
I don't have an alternative, Julian. No, I think it's trendy at the moment, but I think in a few years' time, we hopefully will come up with a better term. Not that I can think of one. But like I say, like many people here, I mean, I'm from the Windrush generation. My father came from the West Indies on a boat, and so sometimes I find it difficult to describe myself and what my kind of cultural background is. But I'm happy to say I've got a mixed one. And so that's one of the reasons I do resist slightly being pigeonholed, even myself.
I can understand that. Well, finally to you, Margot, do you have any thoughts?
Well, again, I can't think of something to replace it, but I agree with what Golfraz said. I think it's important that the word British is in there, because we are all British. We are diverse, but we are British. So yeah, whatever it has got to have British in it.
Right. Okay. That's helpful. If I could just perhaps throw a slight curveball into there, where people are coming to the UK as asylum seekers, the term BEMA obviously encompasses them, and by definition they're not, at least at the point that they're starting on a road of asylum seeking, they're not British at that point. So there's a further complication, shall we say, around that issue. Unfortunately, Laura has had to depart. We thought she might because of her duties at the House of Commons. So I did have a question for her, but we're coming to the end of our time in any event. There's been a whole range of interesting points that are coming up in the chat. I could see we could probably have a debate going on for the rest of the evening, and we hadn't really organised this as a debate meeting, but certainly I think that's something we need to plan for the near future. There's certainly a lot of issues that everyone wants to engage on there, which I think is fabulous. So it falls to me to close this meeting. So in closing this, which is our first Community United Forum, I'd firstly like to extend our very grateful thanks to our distinguished and eminent speakers this evening, with Dr. Deepak Ravindran, Margot Payne, Mark Landreth-Smith, Laura Farris, and Golfraz Riaz. Thank you all, very much appreciated. I'd like to say a special thank you to Rob Cow of Dynamic Media in Newbury,
Yes,
for his creative and technical support, both before and during this event. And finally, a huge thank you to all of you for giving up your valuable time to join us this evening. I hope you found it interesting and informative. And we hope this will be the first of many events hosted by Community United in West Berkshire. And we would, of course, welcome your feedback about the event. I did understand there was going to be a pop-up survey that we might be able to do actually within Zoom. And look at that, there it is, with the wonders of modern technology. If you are able to just give us some quick feedback, that would be fabulous. We will be sharing with you a more detailed survey, if that's okay, in the next day or so. So if you could find time to complete that and send it back to us, we'd be very grateful, because that will enable us then to much better understand how we can do our bit to make West Berkshire a place where we all feel that we belong. So thank you very much indeed. If you haven't already clicked on the event poll that's in the window, if you could, that would be great. Thank you again, and I wish you all a very good evening.
Hi everyone.